As one of the most revolutionary movies ever made, Terminator brought a whole new aspect of technology to viewers worldwide. Tagged as a science fiction movie, it brings to life the dangers of technology and the human will to survive. Terminator was a movie that was one of a kind. Over the years, it has raised questions about the adverse effects of technology and artificial intelligence, prompting us to consider how far we are willing to go in integrating artificial intelligence into our lives. Terminator, a blockbuster success, was the movie that brought Arnold Schwarzenegger into the spotlight. The film follows an assassin robot, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, sent back in time from the year 2029 to Los Angeles in 1984. His mission is to kill a young woman named Sarah Connor, played by Linda Hamilton, whose unborn son will one day save mankind from extinction by Skynet, a hostile artificial intelligence in a post-apocalyptic future. The human resistance, on the other hand, learns of this information and sends their own soldier, Kyle Reese, played by Michael Biehn, back in time to protect Sarah and ensure the destruction of the robot. Mind-blowing car chases, a truck explosion, and several action scenes made it one of the most epic movies yet. But behind the making of the great movie were downright weird occurrences that took place behind the scenes. From jaw-dropping stunts to court cases, this blockbuster movie has its own bizarre story. To create this masterpiece, several difficult decisions were made, and the production of some scenes that drew our eyes to the screen is not as impressive as we think. Every movie has its highs and lows, and a lot happens where the cameras are not rolling. Several scenes play out that do not make it to the big screen but are just as vital to the making of the movie. Keep watching as we reveal some interesting facts about Terminator that you probably never knew. Arnold Schwarzenegger was not the original cast for the Terminator. Over the years, many have agreed that arguably the most iconic character in the movie Terminator was Arnold Schwarzenegger. His role as the Terminator was one of his best works yet, and his stoic, formidable presence and accent had many hearts racing with fear and excitement during the movie. Before his role in Terminator, Schwarzenegger was just getting into the world of acting. He had starred in movies and was pretty successful, but it was Terminator that gave him the push to stardom as he played the role of the deadly robot assassin from the future. With the way his presence filled the screen, it was very hard to imagine anyone else being the Terminator. However, what is fascinating to know is that he was not the original cast for the role of the robot with murderous intent. In fact, when Schwarzenegger was supposed to play the role of Kyle Reese, the human sent from the future to protect the main protagonist of the movie, Sarah Connor, studio producers had suggested O.J. Simpson for the role of the T-800. However, director James Cameron felt he did not really look the part of a menacing killer robot. After a brief argument, it was finally settled that Schwarzenegger would play the part, and he did that exceptionally. Very few people would be able to carry so much stage presence like Schwarzenegger did in the film. It has now become his trademark movie. Whenever you think of Terminator, his face is one of the first that comes to mind. In the movie, Schwarzenegger's acting and facial expression were what fans needed to see, as it kept them looking out for him. Even though he was the main antagonist of the film, his role gave him a special place in the hearts of fans. The silent yet deadly robot became more famous than even the main protagonist, Dot. While we do not deny that Linda Hamilton did a superb job in the movie, you have to admit that it was Schwarzenegger who stole the show. After Terminator, he went on to be cast in other movies, where he finally got to play the role of a hero, as he had initially planned. However, for many people, he would always hold a special place in their hearts as the Terminator. Lance Henriksen was the first actor to dress as a Terminator. Schwarzenegger may have played the part of the Terminator, but Lance Henriksen was the first to wear the costume. In the movie, Schwarzenegger's signature look, complete with a leather jacket, has been forever crafted in the minds of fans. But he was not the first to put on the iconic leather jacket. Lance Henriksen had tried on the costume, and some argued that he would have been a better fit for the role of the T-800. He had worn the leather jacket and had gold foil affixed to his teeth at Cameron's request to sell the movie to Hemdale Film Corporation. He kicked open the door 15 minutes into the meeting and was able to convince the producers of the movie's awesomeness. In fact, his appearance and the outfit startled the secretary so much that she dropped the keyboard she was holding. Cameron may not have seen Henriksen as his murderous robot, But he was impressed by his acting and decided to give him another role in the movie. He became Detective Hal Vukovich for all his trouble. Detective Hal Vukovich was a detective from the Los Angeles Police Department. When the T-800 comes to the future, it begins a search for Sarah Connor. He proceeds to use a phone to search for anyone named Sarah Connor and then eliminates them.
Sarah Connor?
Yes.
This series of killings had him tagged as the phone book killer. Detective Hall became involved in the case and demonstrated considerable intelligence by identifying the real Sarah Connor. Hal had a particular disdain for cases that got a lot of media attention, especially the weird ones, and took his job very seriously. Although he had been Cameron's first choice for the movie, his role as Detective Hal was no less impressive. His ability to think quickly and get answers was a trait many people were impressed by. Not only did he find the real Sarah Connor and Reese in the film, but he also was able to protect Sarah for a short period of time and sacrificed himself so that she could make it out alive. His role was a much-needed boost to law enforcement officers and showcased their willingness to go into the heat of danger to protect citizens. His interaction with his pragmatic partner, Ed, showed a bond of trust and friendship, and for many people, he portrayed the role of detective quite well.
This is going to be short-stroking it all over the place. A one-day pattern killer.
Kyle Reese was supposed to have a robot dog. In the movie, one of the main protagonists, Kyle Reese, was portrayed by Michael Biehn. He was a human soldier sent from the future to protect Sarah Connor from the robot sent to terminate her. Terminator was arguably one of the best science fiction movies ever made during its time. His perseverance in the movie is commendable, and he had fans with their hearts in their mouths as they watched him race against time and a killer robot to find Sarah. After finding Sarah, he explains to her the details of what is really going on and does all that he can to ensure that she survives. Eventually, the two of them fall in love, and their love story is one that gripped fans at home. Kyle's dedication to Sarah was so palpable. He ensured that he did everything possible to complete his mission, even when it cost him his life. His story left fans feeling melancholic till the end. Although his acting was superb and he was able to act exceptionally well, the studio producers had wanted to add a robot dog in the film to keep Reese company. The dog was supposed to come from the future with Reese and would act as a friend and guide for him in Los Angeles of 1984. They also encouraged a close relationship between Sarah and Reese. While Cameron was open to the idea of a love story blossoming between the two characters, he quickly dismissed the notion of a robot dog from the future. That was how we got the blooming love story between Sarah and Reese, and we let sleeping robot dogs lie. But the main characters in the movie were not too optimistic about it.
I just must applaud everything that they did. You know, they worked as hard as I did.
Terminator was arguably one of the best science fiction movies ever made during its time. From the film's beginning to its end, there was always something happening that kept viewers on the edge of their seats. The main movie stars were able to bring the emotions of the characters they portrayed to life. And for years, as the Terminator series rolled out, fans rushed to see it. However, it would shock many fans to know that the main actors in the film, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, and Michael Biehn, were not completely sold on the movie. Back then, most science fiction movies involved space and aliens. The concept of a time-traveling robot was something new, and they did not think it would be a huge hit, as it eventually became. In fact, in an interview during that time, when Schwarzenegger was asked what he was doing, he had said he was doing a shit movie for a couple of weeks. He would soon come back to eat his words as the movie became a huge success. Linda Hamilton was also not completely sold on the project at first, especially when she was told that one of the main characters would be Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger at that time was still a relatively new actor, and his roles in movies usually focused more on his muscles and strength, which some people felt lacked finesse. When Biehn told his actor friends he was working on a movie with Schwarzenegger, they sarcastically replied, "Well, good luck with that." However, by the time they arrived on set and began filming, the cast seemed to develop more confidence in the movie. By the time it premiered, they were all surprised by how well the movie was received. It seemed almost unbelievable that people would be excited about a robot from the future. but the movie was a milestone for the actors, catapulting them to fame. The idea of the movie came from a fever dream. It's interesting to note that one of the greatest science fiction movies of all time came from a fever-induced nightmare. Although the movie is classified as science fiction, it has some dark undertones to suggest a horror movie, the kind of stuff you find in nightmares. And in a way, it was a living nightmare. Film director James Cameron revealed that the movie did, in fact, originate from a nightmare he had while he was down with a fever in Rome. As he lay in bed sick, he developed a high fever, which began to induce hallucinations. He thought he saw a robot coming out of the fire to attack him, which back then was pretty scary to imagine. After he recovered, the image stayed with him and he decided to develop the concept into a movie, which became one of the greatest blockbusters of all time and earned him the recognition of one of the greatest directors ever. Reese's fall from the sky was real. The scenes where Reese drops down from the sky after the time travel left a strong impression on fans' minds as they looked shockingly real. And to add to the surprise, it was real. Michael Biehn, who has performed many of his movie stunts, was truly shocked to learn that the plan for the fall was going to be real. For the scene where Reese drops down from a flash in the sky and lands in an alleyway in downtown LA, Biehn gave us a picture of what really happened behind the scenes. And it's shocking. He claimed that they had a stuntman climb up about 7 feet off the ground and wait for a sign from the director. When Jim called action, Biehn said, the stuntman just jumped off sideways, completely nude, and landed straight on the cement as we see in the movie. And that cement was the real deal, not padded cement. For Biehn, that was one of the most difficult stunts he had witnessed, and one of the most painful. However, that was the price they had to pay to get that scene. The film created a new science fiction subgenre.
I said hold it! Yes!
One of the famous action sequences in the Terminator took place in a nightclub called Tech Noir. This was where the Terminator first came across the real Sarah Connor and tried to kill her. However, Reese came along and saved the day. Cameron named the club Tech Noir, as its roots in film noir led him to think that phrase aptly described the movie. In doing so, Cameron spawned a new subgenre of science fiction, now referred to as tech noir. A movie that explores themes around futuristic technology with a narrative or visual aesthetic influenced by film noir is referred to as tech noir. This subgenre explores the darker side of technology, its impact on humanity, and the consequences of human technological advancements. Another movie credited with this subgenre is Blade Runner. This movie, combined with Terminator, incorporates techniques from film noir and science fiction movies, such as Total Recall, 12 Monkeys, Brazil, and Minority Report, all of which fall under this genre. These films all explored the darker side of technology and its impact on society, often with a healthy dose of action and violence. One common theme in tech noir is the idea of artificial intelligence gone rogue, and humanity's determination to prevail over its own creation. Arnold Schwarzenegger assembled guns blindfolded. Arnold Schwarzenegger had to undergo extensive preparation to portray the role of a humanoid robot with violent tendencies. In the movie, the T-800 has dexterity with guns and can pull one together in less than a few seconds. This ability of Schwarzenegger came with extensive training and preparation. For months, Schwarzenegger trained with guns every day to master his role. For the first 2 weeks of filming, he practiced weapons stripping and reassembling, and then did it while blindfolded until the motions were automatic, like a machine. He spent hours at the shooting range, practicing with different weapons, and had to learn how to do all this without blinking or looking when reloading or cocking the gun. He also had to learn how to be ambidextrous to fit the role of a machine that can perform tasks with either arm. All this practice paid off, and in the movie we witnessed the robot with human skin cause havoc with his superhuman abilities and dexterity with weapons. Although he played the villain in the movie, he was a pretty cool villain. His skill and ability to become so deeply involved in whatever role he was acting fascinated many, and he became a source of inspiration to many younger actors. Arnold Schwarzenegger did not say much in the film. As one of the main characters in the movie, Schwarzenegger's role as the T-800 from the future was epic. For a villain, he had a lot of screen time compared to villains in other movies. However, it may surprise you to know that, despite his frequent appearances, he rarely spoke throughout the film. In fact, throughout the movie, he speaks fewer than 60 words. For a main character, that's pretty rare. But when you think about it, it actually makes sense. He is a robot and only speaks when necessary to obtain information or when required to fulfill his mission. The amount of discipline and practice required to remain silent and maintain a stoic expression on his face is remarkable. For some, because of how effortlessly Schwarzenegger does it, it looks easy. But try not to blink when there's debris flying all around you. It takes a lot of control not to make facial expressions and keep your face emotionless. By playing this role, Schwarzenegger showed how and why he deserved to be one of the greatest movie stars in Hollywood. Schwarzenegger was not completely sold on the iconic "I'll be back" line.
I'll be back.
040, 045. In the movie, one of the scenes that will forever register in our minds occurs when the T-800 goes to the police station looking for Sarah Connor and is turned away at the reception. He then turns to say to the receptionist, "I'll be back." This iconic movie line has been used in numerous films and has also been adapted as a meme. In the movie, that statement brought a sense of foreboding as the T-800 returns a few hours later like he promised, but this time on a murderous rampage in his search for Sarah Connor. Behind the scenes, however, Schwarzenegger wasn't totally sold out on the line. He found the concept of a robot using an apostrophe in a statement unusual. He felt the line should be, "I will be back," which makes sense when you consider that it is a robot that says it. He and Cameron got into a bit of an argument over this statement behind the scenes. For Cameron, the script was perfect the way it was, and he wasn't too open to criticism over it. The argument ended with Cameron telling Schwarzenegger that he didn't tell him how to act, so he shouldn't tell him how to write. And that was how Cameron saved the iconic line of the movie, allowing us to hear Arnold Schwarzenegger say his famous line, "All's well that ends well." Linda Hamilton had some difficulty filming the running scenes. Linda Hamilton played the iconic role of Sarah Connor, the main character who was destined to give birth to the future savior of mankind. The main storyline of the movie follows as the future fights to change the course of history by altering the past. And at the center of all this chaos is the young Sarah Connor, a woman who has been down on her luck with love and is trying to pull her life together. Throughout the movie, Sarah runs from the humanoid robot, the T-800, who will do anything to fulfill its mission of ending Sarah Connor's life. The movie follows Sarah who, with the help of a soldier from the future, runs from the homicidal robot and fights to stay alive so she can give birth to the savior of mankind, who saves humanity from an artificial intelligence gone rogue. In the movie, Sarah has numerous running scenes as she flees from the robot, which is hell-bent on ending her life. Behind the scenes, however, the shooting of the running scenes was more complicated for Linda Hamilton. This was because a lot of her running was done on a sprained ankle. Shortly before filming began, Linda sprained her ankle. She was, however, determined to play the role of Sarah Connor and went on to perform those scenes despite having an injury. As a result, and due to the many chase scenes, she was in pain for most of the shoot. The production also attempted to work around the running scenes to give her a little more ease with them. This is why Reese's Ford has damage on it when he pulls out of Sarah's parking garage at the beginning of the movie. A significant portion of the filming for the running scenes was also completed at the end of the production, allowing her time to recover. Talk about dedication. The tanker truck explosion wasn't real. Another gut-wrenching scene in the film follows Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese as they flee on the run, with the Terminator pursuing them on a motorcycle. When this fails, he hijacks a tank truck and attempts to run down Sarah. Reese, who is badly injured but not out yet, manages to insert a pipe bomb into the truck's hose tube, causing it to explode and reduce the Terminator to its endoskeleton. The spectacular explosion of the truck, however, wasn't as impressive as it looked in real life. It was done using a model. Cameron had initially wanted to use a real truck and do the explosion on site, but due to budget constraints and the risk of property damage, he decided to use a model instead. The scene was shot in front of the police armory, making the scenes even more risky, and could have gotten them into serious trouble if there were reports of property damage. The model used fell apart on the first try and had to be completely rebuilt. 2 days later, it finally pulled through, and the truck explosion scene was recorded. Producers had wanted it to be the end of the movie, as they had wanted a happy ending with the Terminator destroyed in the explosion. Cameron did not like this and insisted there was still more to the film. Arnold Schwarzenegger insured a part of his body that shocked people.
When I stepped out of bodybuilding in 1975,
Often, especially in Hollywood movies, actors and actresses are seen pushing past their comfort zones to bring fans movies they can connect with. To achieve this, they have undergone physical changes to give the film a more realistic appearance. That is why there have been tales of Hollywood actors, actresses, and other entertainers getting insurance for their own body parts for exorbitant amounts of money. Although Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't a star before being cast as the Terminator, he insured a surprising body part for the film. Before his acting career, Schwarzenegger had a career as a bodybuilder, and his bulky frame was one of the reasons he was chosen as the villainous robot T-800. As a bodybuilder, you would expect him to insure his limbs or face, but Arnold went on to get insurance for his eyebrows. For the famous car fire scene, he had to shave his eyebrows. Worried that they wouldn't grow back right, he went on to have them insured at the Lloyd's of London firm. What a weird conversation that must have been at the firm. James Cameron sold the script for Terminator for $1.
To dominate market share, so what are you teaching it? Greed.
When James Cameron wrote the movie The Terminator, he was living in his car. His agent, who was supposed to help him promote the movie and raise interest, did not like the idea of the movie, so James Cameron had to fire him. Cameron then began searching for a way to bring the script to the screen independently. He took copies around studios, trying to get them to take on the movie and take him on as the director. The first part was easy, but the problem arose when he stipulated that he would direct the movie himself. His directorial debut, Piranha 2, wasn't really great, and he was eventually fired due to conflict between him and the studio producers. Although The Terminator was a brilliant idea, production companies were skeptical about Cameron directing the movie. He received many offers for the script from studios, but they were not interested in getting him on board as director. Eventually, Cameron struck a deal with producer Gail Ann Hurd. He sold the film's copyrights for $1, and in return, she would make him the producer. Years later, Cameron regretted this decision and said in an interview that if he could send a message to his past self, he would send the note, "Don't sell." However, his decision to sell the copyrights was not in vain, as he and Hurd would eventually become a couple a few years later. The two eventually separated 2 years after getting married. Cameron was sued for copyright infringement. While The Terminator may be Cameron's best idea ever and gave him the spotlight in Hollywood's directing field, he was not the only one with the idea of robots from the future. When the movie was released, another great writer found startling similarities between the script and his book. Harlan Ellison, an award-winning author and screenwriter, had observed similarities between the movie and the book he had written in 1964. Outer Limits episode, Soldier. In Ellison's work, two opposing soldiers were sent back in time, one to protect a woman and the other to kill her. He also found the concept of the T-800's exoskeleton to resemble a robot design in Demon with a Glass Hand, another work of his. Ellison, who got upset at his findings, filed a suit against James Cameron and the distributor of The Terminator, Orion Pictures. Although Cameron found Ellison's suit baseless and opportunistic and wanted to fight to the bitter end, Orion Pictures was not enthusiastic for a legal battle. To silence Cameron, the management of Orion Pictures informed him that if he fought the case in court and lost, he would be solely responsible for the financial penalty that might follow. The suit was settled out of court, and Ellison got credit in the upcoming releases. This hasn't stopped Cameron from referring to Ellison as a parasite. Michael Biehn almost lost his role because of an accent. Michael Biehn, known for his role as Kyle Reese, sent from the future to protect Sarah Connor, almost missed out on his opportunity. When he went to audition for the role, he had been working on Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, which required him to have a Southern accent. During his audition for the role of Kyle Reese, he was still in character for the part he was auditioning for in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
It was a big deal, so I'd worked real hard on the character and the accent and so on and so forth, and I went down.
Producers found him perfect for the role, but were put off by his accent. When the filmmakers spoke to Bien's agent to ask whether he could speak without it, the agent was confused because his client was from Nebraska and did not have an accent.
On quite a bit, and nobody really expected too much from that film, but when that movie came out...
After speaking with Bien and identifying the source of the problem, he asked to be given a second chance. The producers agreed that Bien auditioned again, this time without the accent. The producers were sold on him, and that's how we got to see Bien as Reese. On set, his character demonstrated resilience and determination as he fought hard until the bitter end to ensure that Sarah survived. He also gave us some pretty emotional moments as he falls in love with Sarah Connor, the woman he is supposed to protect. In Poland, the film was released as The Electronic Murderer. When the movie was released, it went international, reaching the borders of many European countries, including non-English-speaking countries. One of such countries was Poland. As the movie arrived in Poland, however, it had to undergo some changes due to the language barrier to convey its true meaning in Polish. Terminator, when translated to Polish, meant apprentice, which had little to do with the movie. To give it its original context, the title was changed to The Electronic Murderer, which carried more weight and was more in line with the movie than Apprentice. As the other sequels were released, there were already numerous pirated copies, and the people of Poland had already acquired the title, so the sequels retained their original names. James Cameron was a difficult man to work with. James Cameron has always been known as one of the most demanding and detail-oriented directors in Hollywood. He expects perfection and consistently pushes everyone to their limits. Many have described him as someone who is blunt and straight to the point while on set. He knows what he expects from his crew and cast and pushes them until his expectations are met. This was the personality the cast and crew members encountered on set. Cameron was a hands-on director and gave great attention to detail. Some even labeled him as a perfectionist, with little patience for sloppiness. Since his directorial debut was a huge flop, he was more brutal to the crew members of Terminator. Some say he saw the movie as an opportunity to redeem himself and went all out to ensure its success. Due to the demanding nature of his work on set, the crew reportedly had shirts made that read, "You can't scare me, I work for James Cameron. If you can work with Cameron, you can work with anybody." Arnold Schwarzenegger tried not to interact with the cast during production.
I know that it will be repeated over and over. So I remember when the movie came out.
On the screen, Schwarzenegger appears menacing and intimidating with his bulging frame and intense expression. But behind the scenes, he is known to be quite friendly and soft at heart. But when it came to the shooting of Terminator, he tried to stay away from the cast and avoided socializing with them after work. This is because he wanted to give off a dark, mysterious vibe and elicit genuine responses to his presence when they began filming. And it worked. When Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton met on set, it was as the T-800 and Sarah Connor. The terror in her eyes is real as he points a pistol at her face. It was surprisingly a blockbuster success.
Film is a critical factor, certainly for the actors, but also for everyone who's at a creative.
Before the movie was released, few people had faith in the film. Even the cast was uncertain about the movie's success, including Schwarzenegger. In an interview for Conan the Barbarian, he was asked about his role in Terminator, where he referred to it as some shit movie he was making for a couple of weeks. Perhaps the only person who had faith in the movie was its director, James Cameron. The movie premiered on the 26th of October, 1984. That marked one of the greatest days in movie history. Shot for around $6 million, The Terminator was a huge box office success, making $78 million in theaters, and began a multi-billion-dollar franchise. It also marked the beginning of a successful career for Arnold Schwarzenegger and James Cameron. It also won Best Science Fiction Film, Best Writing, and Best Makeup at the Saturn Awards. Cameron went on to make the remaining sequels to Terminator, and even some awesome movies like Avatar and Titanic. What can you say about the Terminator? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. please ensure you watch the videos on your screen. See you next time. Bye.